Hello, trading has closed on May 27th, 2023. As always, we'll begin with our disclaimer. We'll go over our calls and then we'll make some predictions. This is my trading plan for Tuesday. The market's closed Monday. Tuesday is May 30th, 2023. Please remember my calls can be wrong. Trade at your own risk. Looked for the pattern on Friday with the early high. This is it. There's an early high and a late low. It tends to be a negative day, and we said if it's positive, more positivity should ensue. So that's a positive day, but of course any signal has to be confirmed the following day at the open. And if we gap down smartly, the call for additional rally gets killed before the open. Tuesday's pattern should have the early low. Let's go over what we said. I wasn't very impressed by the action on Thursday. I said it wasn't a broad-based advance, and if we were going to continue to advance, we'd have to gap and promptly overtake Thursday's high. Well, we did. So the bulls did what they had to do. These are the patterns I expect to see next week. We're leaving behind a few walls with gaps. These things tend to be unstable patterns. At some time they tend to fill. We also leave behind the target 4105.24. I like to see this printed sometime, but there's no requirement to print anytime soon. The idea is we're not starting a big rally yet, even though I think one's coming. Now, we did cross two unsatisfied MEJT targets off the list, 4207.34 and 4173.65. You can see the support here, and now we're at resistance. During the day, MEJT said this drop wasn't the real thing, that price would recover, which they did. This looks like a strong advance. There are a number of things about it I don't like. Usually Friday advances just keep on going. It's hard to reverse things, but here with less than 5 minutes left in the day to trade, we were under the midday high. It means we dilly-dallied around for a couple hours, didn't accomplish anything. The fact that we closed over it doesn't mean much to me. We only closed over it by 25 cents, and as far as I'm concerned, this means the rally wasn't maintained into the last 5 minutes. We also had a MEJT self-signal I described on page 120 of my book. It's a pretty powerful signal. It doesn't trigger very often. The MEJT system's about 21 years old. I have 3 failures of the sell signal in the last 21 years, and one of them only failed by about 50 cents. So it's a pretty powerful signal we're going to have a drop. Now, when I wrote the book, when I came up with the rules over 20 years ago, I said we're going to have a straight line drop of at least 8 to 10 points, and here was a straight line drop of 8 points. So based on that, one can make the case that the sell signal is already played out. Can't say no. At the time, though, 8 to 10 point drop was about a 1% drop in the index. That was pretty significant. It's not too significant now. And the question is, are we going to get a percentage drop now comparable to the percentage drop we had over 20 years ago? And the answer is that the signal triggers so infrequently, I don't really know. I don't have enough data to say. I suspect there's more coming, but if you wanted to argue it's already played out based on the rules in the book, it has. I'm just very suspicious. Here's Tom DeMark's TDST line. We've now printed a bar completely over the line. That's resistance. To break through resistance, you have to print another bar completely over the high of this bar. Anything's possible. That's going to be hard to do, I think, because the high of the bar is also at the upper Bollinger Band, and moves completely over the upper Bollinger Band don't tend to have staying power. They tend to reverse at some point. So I think if you are going to have a strong advance, it's pretty hard to start one right now. You're still at resistance as far as I'm concerned. Now, I was concerned that the week was threatening to close under this 89-week moving average, but those fears have been allayed because we close over it, and we're still in bull territory, even though it doesn't mean we go up on Tuesday. Well, the general idea, I'm pretty convinced now that we've completed a leading diagonal triangle and we're in wave 2. I'm just not convinced wave 2 is over. If wave 2 were over, I'd like this to be counted as an impulse, and I just can't do that. We're also at strong resistance from a number of different things. Here's the Gann fan line, the 1x1 Gann fan line, and that's very strong resistance. Now you can break through resistance, but if you're going to break through, you should gap over it and hold that gap. If we don't gap over this line, I wouldn't trust to break through it. We also have a trend line from this low, the number of decent hits. So these trend lines meet right here, and that's even stronger resistance. And it's also right about a 61.8% retrace of this drop. So we have pretty strong resistance here from the Gann fan line, from the trend line, from the Fibonacci retrace, and from the DeMark resistance area. And from the MEJT page 120 sell signal. Well, this was my old count, and it doesn't break any rules, and it still might be the right count. But you did have to fudge a little bit by using an abnormal, or unusual, I should say, Fibonacci ratio. And after this advance this week, I think there's a cleaner count, and usually the cleaner the count is, the more reliable the count is. So this is a count from the April high, which counts this as A. We now have an ABC with good fibs. You can see if C in blue is 0.786, that A in blue is 100. So you can count it as being over there. And if that's black A and that's black B, we should have a black C. And that would have us ending right here. If we're going to end right here, we should be able to count this as a completed wave pattern. So let's switch from the 30-minute to the 5-minute chart. Well, it's possible to count this as A and this as B, and it's possible to count this as an ending diagonal triangle. If that's what this is, wave C and wave A don't have to have a Fibonacci relationship. And if that is what this is, we probably ended it right here. And the target for a drop, if we drop, is to undo all the advance. Target's to go back down to here and fill that wall with gap. So if that's the right idea, and we won't know that until the market reopens, that would be the high of the move, and we could retrace all this advance. So at least there's a possibility that we retrace this advance, fill this gap, undercut 4105.24. But if we did, that would be wave C in the last count I showed, last 30-minute count. That would be wave black C. And if it does play out, I would look to catch the falling knife, because then I think a strong wave 3 up would begin. But of course, if we gap up over this, the whole idea is killed. But if we do start down, and if this holds, I think that's a very likely possibility. Tuesday's pattern has the early low. It could still gap up. Typically, it's a rally day with a high in the final hour. But if it isn't bullish, if it's bearish instead, then more weakness should ensue. Friday's typically bearish pattern wasn't bearish, it was bullish. It implies further advance that will come soon, but doesn't mean we advance immediately. And of course, if you gap down smartly, that idea is killed. We value in a straight line too, but not through an area of strong resistance. And if we're to continue the advance on the beta, we should maintain a gap over that resistance on Tuesday. And if you fail to do that, it makes possible a complete retracement of Friday's gains, not necessarily all in a day. I remain convinced much higher prices are coming, but can't see the recent advance as impulsive. I believe we're still in the wave 2 consolidation. So we have strong resistance at this high. If we break through, nothing stops us from going higher. I think the odds favor that holding, but that doesn't make me right. If it does hold, if it holds, we can retrace all this advance, satisfy the 4105.24 target, and be ready to complete this wave 2 and then start a huge rally in wave 3 up. If that doesn't hold, then we have to reconsider our position. So Tuesday has the early low. We'll see if this holds, and that is today's call.